Welcome everybody back into Nerd Sesh. As always, I'm Carson Bradburn, and alongside me is Logan Camden, and today we are continuing our NFL season preview content by giving you all one hot take about every NFC team. That's right, baby, nothing but hot takes. We already did this for the AFC, so go ahead and check out that episode if you want all the spiciest, hottest takes there are, because that's what we're all about here, baby. We're hot take machines and clickbait machines, and all we want to do is go viral in 6-7 every single day. With that being said, I included this same disclaimer for the AFC episode. Not every single one of these takes is going to be flaming hot, because maybe we don't actually have a flaming hot take about every single team. So give us a little bit of grace with that. But we're going bold for the most part, where we feel it is true to ourselves. And we'll start with the NFC East, Logan. And actually, I want to get started with a team that was one of the most interesting in football last year, one of the most surprising, one of the most impressive, the Washington Commanders, coming off of an NFC title game appearance led by Jayden Daniels, who had, in my opinion, the best rookie quarterback season that we have seen. What is your hot take for them?
I mean, this is probably my hottest take of the episode. For full transparency, me and Carson did not corroborate before this. I'm going to take the Commanders to go to the Super Bowl. I will say this. This is with a caveat. This is if they keep Terry McLaurin. I think Terry McLaurin is so important to this team's offensive success. I know they just made a big trade in the offseason to get Deebo Samuel. I'm not particularly high on Deebo Samuel. I don't think he's that good anymore. I think he's a number 2 in this league. I think McLaurin is a legitimate number 1, and if he is on the team throughout the season, if he is content, I am okay with taking this team to go to the Super Bowl. I just think he is vitally important to their success there. But this team did overachieve. They were the surprise team, I think, of the NFL season last year. And I think they improved. You know, offensively, they were the number 5 scoring offense. They were the number 6 third down offense. They were the number 1 fourth down offense. A lot of my faith in this pick comes from Jayden Daniels and the success we saw from him in his rookie year. I mean, we've talked about this a million times on this show. It's the best rookie season ever. Nobody has had the team success that Washington had that directly came from the rookie quarterback, taking them to the NFC title game. And I think Jayden Daniels is just going to continue to improve and continue to lead out an elite offense. I think they will be near the top of the league. I think what he does specifically, threatening the run game, what you can do with him in terms of option stuff, what you can do with him moving the pocket, what he does out of structure. I just think Jayden Daniels is a special QB talent, and I think he is going to continue to get better and better this next season. The only concern I do have is with his defense. This was not an elite group last season, and they are certainly not an exceptional two-way team. I don't expect this defense to be like top 10. I think if they are league average, I think that's good enough. It is going to be on the back of an elite offense. Like, they do lose some personnel on the defensive line. They are a very old unit. I believe this is the oldest average team in the NFL this season in totality. So I'm not going to make the two-way case. This has nothing to do with my pick. This pick comes from my faith in this offense and their ability to run up the score on teams. That was their recipe last season. I think they did lose some important pieces, but I think this defense has a lot of continuity coming into next year. This was basically an entire new roster last season. I think with another year together, I think they should marginally improve there, and I think it should be an elite offense again. So this is, I think, my hottest take I may have made about the NFL in a long time. I'm normally a straight shooter. Like last year, I picked the Lions. This year, I'm going to go a little bit off the walls. I'm not going to go as far as you did last year and take the Cowboys to go to the Super Bowl.
I wouldn't say something like that.
I will take the Commanders to go to the Super Bowl. I think this is my hottest take of the NFL season.
Well, you know what's crazy, Logan? Let me throw some heat right back at you. I think the Commanders missed the playoffs. That's my hot take for this team. I think it's really, really bold to predict that sort of improvement, just because I think last year was such a success. However, I do think there are some potential indicators of regression. And I think if they could replicate last year's success, get back to the NFC title game.
He said
I'm not
it's
saying
aberration.
That. I'm really not saying that. I just think, first of all, The schedule is brutal. It is the 8th toughest in the NFL. They play 8 playoff teams from last year. They have to go against the entire AFC West and the NFC North. Those are the 2 toughest divisions in football. They're playing both of them. I feel like you could easily go 2-6 against those 2 divisions if you're Washington and not even feel like you played that badly. Not even feel like, oh man, we dropped one that we really shouldn't have. Because if you lose to the Chiefs, Chargers, Broncos, Vikings, Packers, Lions, like those are all really, really good teams who I would consider as good, if not better than Washington on paper. And then, of course, you have to play the Eagles twice. That's your reigning Super Bowl champion. Even like some of their other games out of division, Seattle, at Miami, at Atlanta. I'm not going to say those are tough games, but they're not gimmies. And when you look at the rest of the totality of the schedule, it's just really damn hard. I even think within the division, the Giants are going to be sneaky tough this year. Obviously, I think Washington is better, but like that's not a pushover football team with what they have defensively, especially up front. And then I do look at Washington's defense, and to say that they were not elite like you did, that is an incredibly kind way to put it. I mean, that was obviously the major red flag about this team all year. They were a well below average defense. They were 23rd in points allowed per drive. They were a bottom 5 run defense. They do lose Dante Fowler, who had a nice season. They bring in Von Miller as a replacement edge rusher. And Vaughn had a bounce back season. I mean, he was so bad for the Bills in 2023, and he was much more productive on a per snap basis this past year. But nevertheless, like, he's not somebody who should really be starting for you at this point. He played about a third of the snaps for the Bills, was kind of brought in as like a third down pass rushing presence, and he was good in that role. But I think that is still a point of concern. I mean, just the lack of a really impactful edge rusher for this team. I still think the run defense is bad. Like, the linebacker tandem of Luvu and Wagner rocks. But outside of that, man, I see a lot of problems here. I think safety could be a major issue. I think the corner play is still very meh for this defense. The secondary was a problem last year. So that's really what it comes down to. Really difficult schedule. A defense that I think is one of the weakest among the playoff caliber teams in football. The offense is still going to be really, really good.
That's what I was going to ask. Are you expecting offensive regression?
I'm not expecting offensive regression. I think it would be wildly impressive if the offense was any better than last year, though, just because I think it's such a cliche, but there is truth to the idea of teams having a sense of the Commanders' scheme now, what they are trying to accomplish offensively, kind of their signature go-tos. And so I think we even saw this progression throughout last year where early on in the year, I mean, they were so successful with the screen game on early downs, with the run game on early downs, getting themselves in second and medium, third and short, and they were just constantly ahead of schedule. And then that wasn't the case as much in the second half of the year. I want to give props to Jayden for how he was able to adjust and I thought manage some more difficult circumstances. And their offense was still very good throughout the entire year, but it was kind of most explosive and effortless early in the year. I do think there's probably a little bit more pressure on Jayden as a drop back passer throughout this entire year. And I'm a huge believer in Jayden. But if he replicates what he did last year, statistically, I think that that's a big time success. I do think the offensive line is a bit better. I like the addition of Tunsil. Hopefully they get Sam Cosmi back and healthy. And the Debo addition to me, it's a good one. But I do agree with you that he has definitely regressed. So yeah, I think the offense is awesome. I think it's probably still like a top 5-ish kind of group. But maintaining last year's overall success against this schedule with limited room to improve offensively with a really problematic defense, I just think it's tough. I think it's a lot to ask. So I look at the NFC. There's some good teams. The Commanders themselves are having to play a lot of them in the regular season, and I think it's going to be really challenging, and we may see a little bit of a slump for this team, even though I think their long-term trajectory is still very positive. It's just these things aren't linear, right? It's not uncommon to take a big leap in year one with a new coach, with a new system, with a new star quarterback, and then the next year is a little bit rougher. We just saw this with CJ Stroud and the Texans, who actually still won a playoff game in year two, but they were also in a terrible division, whereas the Commanders have a really difficult schedule to play.
I'm in on the Commanders, man.
To the freaking Super Bowl, man.
I'm so high on Jayden. And obviously, I think that if Jayden, I mean, I'll just say this, like if Jayden isn't a superhuman in year 2, yeah, I could see something like this playing out. That being said, I'm just so impressed. His ability to get the offense into short and manageable situations consistently on 3rd and 4th downs, his composure, his ability to lead and go on these late game drives, his ability to protect the football and strike this elite balance between taking shots and being conservative, the balance of the offense between the rushing attack and the passing game. I love the offensive line. I think the skill position talent is talented, but they're also deep and they're versatile. Like, I really like the versatility in the running back room, and this is really just a faith in Jayden bet, man. I think Jayden's the man.
I think Jayden is fantastic. I think what he did last year was so wildly impressive. But I will say again, even though he was still really good down the stretch, incredible in the playoffs, the offense was still really good. Like, second half of the regular season, he's taking significantly more sacks. The turnovers do go up a little bit. Just the overall risk profile of the offense was increased. And I wonder over the entire year, can that be sustained to the same level of success of last year where they were such a great offense on the ground, through the air, and situationally? But again, with the offense, it's only nitpicking. That's really, really not my concern. It's the schedule and the defense that make me lower on the Commanders. And I just don't think like Jayden can single-handedly will them to a Super Bowl, when I do think in the trenches they don't compare to a lot of the elite teams. When I do think in terms of the secondary and just the overall defensive personnel, they don't compare to a lot of the elite teams. Let's talk about them Dallas Cowboys, Logan. I'm really excited for this. What's your hot take about Dallas? 0-17? Can I get an 0-17 prediction out of you?
No, but they missed the playoffs. The Cowboys suck, man.
Oh, that's not a hot take. Who thinks the Cowboys are going to make the playoffs?
You picked them to make the Super Bowl last year, man.
That was last year. And then everybody on their defense got hurt, and Dak got hurt, and also they sucked.
The excuses. I mean, I guess the hotter take.
Not an excuse. I said they sucked.
Yeah, they did suck.
Are you going to throw my one bad take against me for the rest of my life? I've got some I can open the vault for with you, Logan.
Oh, for sure. I mean, I've got a myriad. That one was just so funny to me.
That's my worst take ever. It's the worst take of my life. I own it. Go Cowboys.
I mean, a more optimistic take would be, I think the Cowboys have the potential. They might have the best passing attack in the NFL. They could throw for, I think they could have 2 1,300-yard receivers, maybe 2 1,400-yard receivers. Like, I think CeeDee Lamb and George Pickens are going to be the best receiving duo in football. So if you want my positive Cowboys take, it's going to be about my baby boy, George Pickens, because I love him, and he's going to be awesome with Dak, and the Steelers are going to be sitting over here with old-ass Aaron Rodgers and DK Metcalf, and I'm going to be crying and sad because Dak and Pickens and CD are going to light it up. But I don't like the Cowboys. I have a general disdain for them. Some may call it a hatred. And so I have to make a negative take. And so my negative take is going to be, I think they missed the playoffs. But yeah, I mean, I think their offense is going to be explosive. The passing attack, if Dak stays healthy, if the offensive line doesn't get majorly dinged up, I really do. I think Pickens and CD will be the best receiving duo in football. There's some really good ones in the NFL today. Like, I think Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, A.J. Brown, and Devontae Smith. Feel free to chime in if I'm missing anybody, Carson. But to me,
they don't want you to know about BTJ and Travis Hunter year one.
They're going to be loaded.
There's a lot of great ones.
I mean, Amon-Ra and J-Mo, I think, are awesome. But Waddle and Hill still are really great. I think CD
and Puka.
Yeah, for real. I think CD and George are going to be the best in the NFL, though.
That's fun. I think that's a really, really high bar right now, but they're absolutely one of the best. And you kind of hinted at what my hot take is. I think Dak leads the NFL in passing yards this year. And we actually kind of talked about this in our top 10 quarterbacks episode. Dak, of course, was not one of your top 10 quarterbacks, Logan, but he was one of mine. And if you just look at the production, man, since 2019, Dak is second in passing yards per game by an active quarterback, only to Patrick Mahomes, 278 yards per game. In that time, his last 3 healthy seasons, he's finished 2nd, 7th, and 3rd in passing yards. I love to talk about the 2023 season when, with a average offensive line, with a mediocre run game, with only one high-end weapon in the receiving game, Dak led that Dallas group to be the number 1 offense in football, and he was incredibly productive. leading that passing attack. In this season, I think there's just going to be a ton asked of Dak. The run game last year was awful for Dallas. They were 27th in yards on the ground, 30th in touchdowns, dead last in yards per attempt. Personally, I think Javonte Williams and Miles Sanders behind what is a well below average offensive line at this point means that run game is going to be bad again. And so they are going to lean on Dak. And they have Dak, who is a really good quarterback. And they have an elite receiver duo in CeeDee and Pickens. And they've got solid additional weapons with Ferguson and Tolbert. And I also just think they're going to be asking Dak to throw them back into a lot of games or just generally keep up in a lot of track meets because they face a really tough schedule too. They're going to go up against some great offenses. And the defense was so bad last year. I think they should definitely be improved on that side of the ball just because they were decimated in terms of health. And you hope for full health from Diggs and Deron Bland and Micah. But obviously the situation with Micah is still hanging over their heads, at least as of the moment we're recording this episode. Diggs, unfortunately, has just been hurt a lot over the last couple years. He's still banged up. They also might not get Overshown back all year. I thought he was a bright spot. There's another major injury there. And overall, I mean, they were just terrible versus the run and the pass last year. They were one of the worst defenses in football without basically all their best players. But I still think you're hoping that this defense is going to be mediocre, basically. You've got a new coaching staff, of course. Matt Eberflus is going to be in charge of the defense now. I don't know how I feel about that, but I really do think Dallas's path to winning 8 games, whatever it may be, is going to rest mostly on Dak in the passing attack. That's going to be their formula, and I do think he's going to put up really big numbers, and maybe there are some decently high turnover numbers in there too, just because the burden on him is so great and the run game really isn't effective for this offense. But I think Dak's going to do his job at a very high level. I just think the team is really flawed.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, yeah, I think the defense is bad.
All right, let me ask you this.
Yeah.
You're saying the Cowboys aren't going to make the playoffs. I'll see if I can prompt a spicier take out of you. Who's better this coming season, the Cowboys or the New York Football Giants?
Cowboys.
Okay. Well, what's your hot take for the Giants then?
It's interrelated with that. I think Brian Dable is fired mid-season. That's my take for New York. I know a lot of people are optimistic about the Giants this season because of this monstrous pass rush they've created. I just think they still have a lot of other holes that they need to address on this team. I know that they went out there and they added some guys in the secondary. I still think the secondary is bad. I'm not really buying into it. I don't think this offensive line is very good. Andrew Thomas is nice. He's cool. But I look at this roster. One, the Giants are 9-25 over the last 2 seasons. I think about their quarterback play this upcoming year. If there's anybody that's going to frustrate the fuck out of a guy like Brian Dable and, make him turn cherry red like we're accustomed to, it's Russell Wilson. I think that look, man, I already know how the Russ thing is going to go. Russ is going to come out. He might win 2 of his first 4 games. He connects on some deep balls to neighbors, and then the cornball shtick comes up. He plummets. He falls apart. The only good thing about Russ at this point in his career is that deep ball. It's nice. It'll win you a couple of games, but he's not really versatile as a passer. He takes a lot of sacks. He can't roll out the pocket and create out of structure like he used to. That, to me, is the most undersold thing about Russell Wilson in this stage of his career. People, I think, automatically with a lot of these veteran quarterbacks will just automatically pencil them in as this guy, as he gets older, he's still got the mind, so the arm isn't as important anymore. The thing that made Russ special was his ability to get outside of the pocket and create. His mobility is what made him special. Right, with a guy like Brady or a guy like Peyton, these guys are tall, and they can see over the defense, and they have all these passing angles that Russell Wilson just doesn't have, so the mobility aspect was never as important with any of those guys. That's why I think Russ is just nowhere near as good or even close to as he was. I feel like that's a minute point that I really shouldn't have to make at this point in his career, but I know that some people are still relatively high on what Russell Wilson can give to your offense. I don't think this offense is particularly dynamic. I don't think they have an elite running game. Again, I'm not a huge fan of the offensive line in totality. I really do like Andrew Thomas. So I look at this group and I see an offense that is going to be bad, in my opinion, next season. I see a potential that Russell Wilson gets benched mid-season. When that happens, you are turning to Jackson Dart, a rookie that I'm not particularly high on, or Jameis Winston, a guy who is a roller coaster. All while, the only group on this team I like is the pass rush, where you can only have a certain amount of these guys on the field all at once. You know, like that's a strength. That is the strength of this team. I don't want to undersell that aspect of this Giants team. It should be a ferocious pass rush. It's the only group of this team that I like. And so I see a team that has been spiraling for 2 years under Brian Daboll, that has drastically underachieved. I feel like this team is reaching a boiling point with Daboll. And I think mid-season, when Russ goes down, we're going to turn to a backup quarterback. The Giants are going to go on a 3 or 4 game skid. The front office says this is enough, and they cut ties with Brian Daboll. For me, that's my hot take about the Giants, but I also think Daboll is the prime candidate of any head coach to get axed mid-season.
Wow. Maybe I'm expecting a little bit more patience out of the Giants. I also think that I just think they're a better football team than you do, but I don't think that they're expecting too much out of a Russell Wilson.
I think they win 5 or 6 games.
I think they're better than that. The thing is, they have the hardest schedule in football, so they have to play Eagles twice, Commanders twice, and then they have to play the full AFC West and NFC North. Like, there's just not a lot of 50-50 games in there. I think the Giants' defense is going to be pretty elite, and I think that although I know how you feel about Russ, even though you are a Russ hater, and then you talked yourself into being really high on Russ when he was a Pittsburgh Steeler, and now that he's no longer a Steeler, you're back to being a Russ hater. I get it.
Hey, let's be clear about something. I was out on Russ by the end of last season.
That's true, but I also had to deal with some crazy.
Yeah, I was hot, dude. He was cooking, and then when that skid hit, you could see it, and I'm still angry at Mike Tomlin that he didn't pull the trigger and start Justin Fields. Like, that team was snowballing into an absolute avalanche, and the fact that Tomlin didn't call an audible on him still pisses me off. So, look, yes, I got high on Russ midseason, and then all of his flaws reared their ugly head.
So, I don't think Russ is very good. Here's all I'm going to say. You said Russ was cooking for a stretch, and he was. When was the last time a Giants quarterback was cooking for a stretch? I mean, the quarterback play
Daniel
has been
Jones
brutal.
in like 22? Was that the year?
Yeah.
Like when literally the scheme of the team was, let's limit how much Daniel Jones touches the ball.
So
which honestly should be their strategy with Russ.
Well, now the Colts are going to have to employ that strategy since Daniel Jones is their week 1 starter. But look, man, Russ is significantly better than Daniel Jones. I think that Russ is probably a bottom 10 starter. He's still significantly better than Daniel Jones. He is more accurate. He throws a much prettier deep ball. He doesn't do nearly as much mind-blowingly stupid shit. Like, Russ is, with all his limitations, at the very least, a professional who is going to be able to, more so than the previous disasters at quarterback, keep decent control of games and run a competent NFL offense. That's all I'm saying Russ is going to be able to do for them, and I don't think they're expecting more than that. Like, they've been pretty clear about not wanting to rush things with Jackson Dart. I don't think we're going to see him this year. And if we do, I think it'd be very late. And I also don't think, like, Russ is going to have the sort of disaster where it's like, okay, we're going to Jameis. Like, I think he's just going to be below average for the entire year. And this isn't like the Steelers where it's like, oh, we want to make the playoffs. The Giants are like, we just want to progress. We just want to take a step forward. We just want to be something other than a disaster offensively and then lean on our defense and see if we can win 7, 8, 9 games and then put Dart in a position to be successful. So I don't see a meltdown with the Giants this year. I actually think this is probably encouraging, and I kind of feel like if they were going to fire Daboll, wouldn't they have done it after last year? Just like with the regression from where they were at in 2022. Last year, they really hit rock bottom. They gave him another opportunity to see things through with the new vision of the roster. I would be surprised if they yanked that opportunity away from him after 8 games or whatever, because I do think There is a floor with the Giants that comes from them having, in my opinion, a top 5 defense this year. That is my take about New York, my hot take. Because I think that, first of all, that defensive line, that pass rush is absolutely ferocious. Dexter Lawrence is a defensive player of the year, caliber presence. He was absolutely monstrous last year, putting forth pass rushing numbers that it is incredibly rare to see from a defensive tackle and a man of his size. Brian Burns is an elite pass rusher. I think Abdul Carter is a freak. I think he could easily be a double-digit sack guy as a rookie. Kayvon Thibodeau maybe hasn't been what they hoped that he would. He's still pretty good as a pass rusher. There's just very few teams that have that many pass rushers of that caliber up front. So I think they could lead the league in pressures. I think they could lead the league in sacks. Like, that's going to be the great strength of this defense and this team. It's that pass rush. Then you have a linebacking core with Bobby Okereke, who's quite good. You add Javon Holland to the secondary. I think that they have pretty good cornerback talent. Like, this defense is pretty strong all around. The one concern is the run defense, where they were not good last year. That has to improve. But I look at the totality, liking the secondary and loving the pass rush. I think this is going to be a difficult team to score on. Are they going to struggle to score in their own right? Absolutely. Although I do think that their offensive line is underratedly competent. I do think that Neighbors is a flat-out monster, and I still think that Russ is a significant upgrade from what they've had, but the offense is going to be well below average. I think the defense is going to be awesome, though.
I'm definitely not as high on the secondary as you are. To me, it still screams like that's the red flag about this defense and what keeps them. Yeah, I don't know. I was really high on Deonte Banks when he came out of the draft. He's been kind of disappointing. Like, I just was. Yeah. I was so high on him.
But they bring in Paulson Adebo. Drew Phillips was really good. I think Holland is a stud. Like, there's talent in that secondary.
Yeah, I mean, there's talent on this defense, no doubt. I just still see that. I think the safety spot, or I think the secondary spot is still a glaring weak point for this team, and I think Russ is going to get worse. Would you take the
Commanders secondary or the Giants secondary?
The Commanders.
No! What a disastrous take!
The Commanders have a number one corner, in Lattimore.
Marshawn Lattimore in the big 2025 we're propping up over Paulson Adebo?
Yeah, I mean, I think Lattimore's – I still think Lattimore's really good. Like –
he's all right. He's still getting torched last year.
Yeah, it's close. I don't know, but I mean, the difference to me is just the offense. Like, I think Russ is going to eat a lot of sacks. I think he's going to be a really frustrating watch, and I think the offense is going to be that bad. I could see this defense being top 10. I would be shocked if they were top 5.
Well, that's my hot take, buddy. Live with it. Let's move on now to the reigning Super Bowl champions. You can only get so hot about a team that is so great, but what is your take for the Eagles?
This is pretty it's a pretty hot take because it's never been done before in NFL history, and I'm going to have this guy do it in back-to-back seasons. I'm going to say Saquon Barkley becomes the first player in NFL history to record back-to-back 2,000-yard campaigns. Not only has that never been done in NFL history, no player has ever ran for 2,000 yards in 2 seasons in NFL history. It's only been accomplished once by everybody who's done it. And I just look at this front line, and they didn't lose a ton. They lose one starter in Mekhi Becton, who was great last season, but it's still an all-pro group to me. Jordan Mailata on the left side, Lane Johnson holding down the right side, Landon Dickerson at left guard. He's working his way back from an injury, but he should be great. I think Cam Jurgens is a monster in the middle, and the identity, the strength of this team is their defense, where I do think they lost some important pieces, but that's the identity of this group. They like to play smash mouth, ball control kind of football, and Jalen Hurts picks his spots. I think Jalen Hurts enhances Saquon in the running game, but Saquon is also just one of the best running back talents I've ever watched. And you just look at what he was dealing with in New York to what he's dealing with now. Like, he flourished last season. The reason it's bold is because I am picking that 2K mark for him to hit, but I think he can do it. I don't think it would have been hot if I came on here and said, he's going to get 1,500 or he's going to get this. I think Saquon is going to do it again. This offensive line is just like all-pro caliber. The only new guy in there is Tyler Steen, who is going to slot in at right guard. They're doing kind of the Becton thing with him, where when Steen entered the NFL, he was a tackle, and he's played on different spots as like the the swing guy on their offensive line, where he'll slide in when they need him. He's kind of played all over the line, but they're going to do the Becton thing where they swing him inside. So that may be a little bit of a variable at the beginning of the season, but I'm so confident in the rest of this offensive line that I could see Saquon doing it. And, of course, this is a no-brainer to mention, but we do have the additional game. I think that helps Saquon's case for him to reach this mark, but it's bold, but I think it's possible, man. I think Saquon's that good, and I think this offensive line is that good.
I like it. Saquon is an absolute freak. Just had one of the greatest running back seasons we have ever seen and is playing behind one of the best offensive lines that we've seen in modern NFL history. They are going to run the ball a shit ton. We know that. That is their identity. I can see it happening. It's just really, really hard to replicate. In fact, I'm trying to think, what's actually the closest that a player ever has come after the 2K season to doing it again the next year?
That's a good question. I mean,
that was basically it for TD. He fell off after that.
Derrick
Henry got banged up the next year.
OJ came very close, not in back-to-back seasons. In 73, he goes for 2,003. In 14 games, mind you. In 75, 2 years after that, notched 1,814 games. Had 140 yards per game the 2K year, 130 per game in 75. Obviously, if you scale that out, he would have hit 2,000. So OJ, I think, is probably the closest to ever have, notching that twice. It's insanely difficult. I mean, Peterson never, came close after he hit 2K. It's tough, man.
I'm trying to find the closest literally the following season. I've looked through almost everybody, and nobody has been really remotely close. Let's see. I feel like Barry might have been the closest. Barry with 1491 was the closest anybody ever came to replicating that feat the following season. So that's why it's a hot take. I definitely think it is possible. The thing with Saquon is just I do worry about that level of wear and tear and just that level of physical stress, especially because this is a guy who over the years has been banged up a fair amount. It's so awesome that he was as fully healthy and dominant as he was this past year. And if that remains the case, I don't see why this couldn't happen. Maybe A.J. Dillon eats into his touches a little bit, but he's going to be so damn efficient with them. It's just more a question of can anybody do this in back-to-back seasons, especially someone with the previous injury issues that Saquon has had. My take for the Eagles really isn't that hot. I think they go back to the Super Bowl. And I think anytime you say a team is going to the Super Bowl, that's a bold enough claim because only one team can do it in each conference. But they are the favorite and deservedly so. I just look at this roster up and down, and as I have said, I think the 2024 Eagles had the best roster in totality that we have seen since the 07 Pats. I think you could maybe even argue further back. You think about what were some of the questions about this team going into the year? The secondary, where they immediately just hit home runs with Mitchell and Cooper DeJean. The defensive front, could they produce up to their potential? And they absolutely did this past year. And after the bye week, we're just an absolutely dominant defense at every level, getting an all-pro season out of Zach Bond. Ridiculously stacked. And then offensively, they're still going to be the best in the trenches. They're going to be the best trench team overall when you combine the offensive and defensive line. That's an incredible formula. And, of course, they have the best running back in football. They have probably the best receiving duo in football if you made me choose, with A.J. Brown and Smitty. And so I just think it's so extremely replicable. Yes, they do lose Kellen Moore, and I don't think that that's nothing, but the talent here is just so overwhelming. And their formula is so easy, man. I mean, you just control the trenches, you dominate the time of possession offensively, you chip away, dominant with the run game, hit on explosive in the passing game here and there with an absolute freak like A.J. Brown. And it's just really difficult for teams to keep up with them physically.
I'm not as high on the Eagles team prospects. Now, I think they could win the division. I think they'll make the playoffs. There is a little bit of roster turnover that I'm concerned with, like them losing Milton Williams up front. And just a little bit of turnover at all three levels. Not to say that they're not super talented. I just think to expect this defense to be this dominant again is a little unlikely. And then I do worry, I'm not as worried about Saquon individually, but I do think some of the play calling, I am a little bit worried about with them losing Kellen Moore as the offensive coordinator. I think he was really important to their offensive success last season. So I don't think it's a ridiculous take. I think it's a good one. This team is still uber talented at a lot of different position groups. So I can see it. This is a reasonable take. I just don't expect them to be as dominant as they were last season. So, I mean, it's like, I'm saying all this. They're going to go from, what are they, 14 wins last season to they win 12, 11 this season. I think they'll still be one of the top teams in the NFC.
Yeah, I feel like maybe the one knock on the defense would be, do you have that really high-end edge? They do lose Josh Sweat, who was really good for them and was phenomenal for them in the Super Bowl. But I still look at, the aggregate size and athleticism up front, and I definitely think that they can get pressure at a really high level. So you're right that we probably shouldn't expect this defense to be as dominant as it was last year after the bye when they were just ridiculous and suffocating, because they do suffer some losses up front. In the secondary, CJ is out, Slay is out, but I think that secondary is still loaded. I like how they replenish there. They bring in Adoree Jackson. Sidney Brown now steps up into a starting safety role. I think that he's played well in his snaps. And they still have so much talent defensively. And Fangio is a stud. You look at the improvement that he helped engineer on that side of the ball from 2023 to last season. I trust him. I have the ultimate faith in Howie Roseman. And also, it's even if this team does take a step back from last year, which I think they will, I don't think they'll be that dominant. This was one of the stronger Super Bowl champs that we've seen. They went 16-1 down the stretch of the season, including the playoffs, and had one of the most dominant Super Bowl performances that we have seen. So, even accounting for a little bit of a drop-off and a little bit of loss of talent, I still just think that they have the best path to being elite offensively, elite defensively, being the best overall football team in the conference. I'd like to be cheeky, take somebody else. I do think that Philly just has the best formula to run it back, so I'm going to ride with them for now. Let's move to the NFC West, Logan. The Los Angeles Rams won the division last year. What's your hot take for them?
I'm going to take them to run it back and win the division again. It's kind of a lukewarm take. I'm going to be honest. I think the NFC West is probably my most lukewarm division, but I think the Rams do repeat. And I was high on the Rams last season. Before the season began, I picked them to go to the NFC title game. I thought they had a very encouraging year. I will admit, by week 2, week 3, I had sold all of my Rams stock. It was completely foolish considering that I had bought so much preseason. And then I had to buy it when it was back at its apex later in the year. So I'm going to hold on to it again this year. I just think that the Rams have a very replicable formula to be successful again this season. The only concern I really do have is with Matthew Stafford with his back injury, just because back injuries can be so debilitating, and I'm just concerned about him staying at the level that he was at because I think he is so important to this team's success. Granted, I do want to give props to Kyron Williams. I think he's a special running back near top of the league. I think they replaced Cooper Kupp with a better wideout. I think Kupp has fallen precipitously from where he was at his Triple Crown apex. I think Devontae's just better than him, so I think the passing attack should be just as potent if Stafford is where he's at. Adams and Nakua are just better than Kupp and Nakua. And then defensively, I mean, the Rams have done a phenomenal job of rebuilding this defense back up, and it's probably where I'm most confident. I think Verse and Fisk are awesome up front, and I think this defense is solid around them. They've drafted a lot of young guys over the past few years. They've done a great job of internal development. And so I look at this team, young, improving defense with monsters up front on the defensive line, an offensive recipe that is balanced, that I believe in, a superstar, fringe superstar quarterback at this stage in his career with an explosive receiving group. I look at the other teams, and I just think they're the most complete out of all of the units. Arizona, I really like their offense. I'm not as high on the defense. I still think they have A lot of area to improve there. The Niners, I think, are due to hit a hitch, and the Seahawks I'm just not as high on, even though they had a really encouraging year last year. So I think the West is probably the most interesting division in football, man, where people will have a range of opinions. I think a lot of people will take every single team in this division to win. That being said, I'm going to be a little stale with it. I'm going to take the Rams to repeat as the division champs.
Well, I've got the same take, Logan, and I do think you can kind of argue that whoever you pick to win this division is a hot take to some extent, just because, like you said, I think we saw this last year where it kind of felt like probably the most open division in football, all four teams within like a reasonably similar range. I also think it just seems like everybody's kind of out on the Rams right now. And so count me in, man. I'm in on the Rams. I like their formula. And I think the Stafford back injury definitely has something to do with a lot of the pessimism. But he's back out there practicing now. So I think that's a positive indicator. And I think this team can absolutely improve from where they were at last year. First of all, their offensive line was pretty banged up last season. And I think at full health, that should be a very solid group. You mentioned not only are they upgrading from Kupp to Devontae, which I do think is a significant improvement. I mean, Devontae was still so good last year. He had almost 1,100 yards in 14 games and subpar passing offenses. Like, that is one of the elite wide receiver duos in football they've put together now. Not only have they upgraded there, their receivers were also banged up last year. Puka was banged up. Kupp was banged up. So I think that receiving talent should be better this year. I think the run game should be more efficient with hopefully a fully healthy offensive line or a healthier offensive line, because Kyren Williams has shown that, like, he is one of those guys who can eat up monster volume. You can give him the ball 300 plus times in a season and he'll hold up physically. He's just got to cut down on the fumbles a little bit. And also, the big difference in his efficiency was 2023, he was second among all running backs in yards before contact. Last year, he was 20th. So again, I think that just speaks to the banged up offensive line, not having the same level of push in the run game. I think that bounces back this year. And they've got a brilliant coach. Sean McVay is going to be tier 1 for me for the foreseeable future, and an elite quarterback. I still think that Stafford, even if he's not putting up the gaudiest regular season numbers, is incredible at controlling a game, at elevating at the right moments. His arm talent, his processing of the game is all still really, really awesome. So I like all that about the offense. And then defensively, like you said, I mean, they've built this awesome young front and a really good pass rush. They definitely have their issues defensively. And last season, like, there were a number of things. You look at their roster right now, the linebackers are a question. I think the secondary is just solid, but they were not at all a good statistical defense last year overall. They were 26th in points allowed per drive. They were 26th in passing yards per attempt allowed and 26th in rushing yards per attempt allowed. But I think they were definitely a better defense than those numbers suggest, especially at the end of the year, because they trended way up, which makes sense for a young defense. But last 6 weeks of the season, including the playoffs, they held 4 opponents to single digits. They also ate Minnesota alive in the playoffs. And they did that because they excel at the most valuable thing, which is generating pressure up front. And that's where they had 8 sacks in that game against Sam Darnold, if I remember correctly. So they're young, they're well coached, they peaked at the right time last year, they do the most valuable thing defensively at a high level. Like, I don't see why this defense wouldn't at least slightly improve this year. And even with all this stuff that we're talking about, right, this young, unproven defense early in the year, injuries offensively kind of across the board, run game not being as good as they're used to, after the bye, they still went 10-4 and won a playoff game. So I just think the Rams are really good, and I will bet on the formula of great coach, great quarterback, really good pass rush, skill position talent offensively that I do like. I think they are the most complete team in the division, like you said, and so I am buying more Rams stock. I think they've been a good bet over the last couple of years. The only thing that's really dinged them has been health, and so if the Stafford injury does prove to be an issue, obviously that changes everything, but I'm going to be an optimist on that because I love me a little Matt Stafford.
I mean, if Stafford's alive and healthy, give me the Rams.
Let's hope alive, but I have seen a lot of people tweeting recently about his passing. And by that, I don't mean his passing on the field. I mean a lot of people saying Matt Stafford sadly has died, passed away.
Yeah, I also
Coach
heard
Lou tweeted about it, and he's always right about everything.
Dude, I heard that his teeth are just like taking over the rest of his body. Like he's just going to become a chattering, like those little wind-up mouths. Mm-hmm. That's what he's going to be on the field. It's like a virus, but it's his teeth, and they're just taking over the rest of his body. It's
tough
insane,
to bring that
man.
guy down, though, probably with a build like that. You might get chomped.
I've never seen anything like it, man.
He might do the Dan Campbell bite your kneecaps.
Bite your kneecaps. So he's just going to eat you entirely in like one bite, like a whale.
It's interesting, Logan. It's incredible how the game just continues to evolve. We're seeing archetypes we've never seen before. Fantastic stuff. How about the Seahawks? What is your hot take for them?
Again, I'm a little lukewarm with these takes, but I think Sam Darnold in Seattle lead the NFL in sacks again this year. I'm just still skeptical about this line. This has been one of the storylines, I think, in preseason that the Seahawks are going to take this big leap. Now, I want to be clear about something. I think the Seahawks are going to be much improved in the run game. I really like what I've seen in their ability to create holes and gaps and how they've been able to defend as a team in the run game. I think Kenneth Walker and Charbonnet are going to be the biggest beneficiaries of the investment in the offensive line. I'm not as encouraged about them protecting up front for Sam Darnold. So this team last year allowed the third most sacks, the most pressures, and the most hurries in the NFL last season. Cross and Lucas are battling back from injuries, and I think those guys are solid, but they stay injured. I'm worried about them being available. That was a big question mark last season. The guy I am in on is Gray Zabel. That guy looks like a stud out of North Dakota State, the first-round pick that they added. So I like that addition. But the thing that I don't want to get lost in this improvement that Seattle has made is how much Geno made up for this group last season. Like, Geno's mobility, even though he was the most pressured and the most hurried, like, Geno's mobility covered up, I think, for a lot of this group last year. And you put a guy like Sam Darnold back there, I'm just really nervous about his viability and his ability to mitigate pressure. I thought you saw last season in Minnesota when he was behind one of the best pass-protecting lines in football. Like, Darnold was successful. But when the pressure got home, Darnold crumbled a lot. And we saw some of the old Darnold pop up, especially late in the season. And I'm just nervous, man. I think that Darnold could crack and fall apart. He's not the most mobile guy. Like, he was better than he was in years previous. Like, it wasn't Jets Darnold. It wasn't Panthers Darnold. He looked better. And there were some games where you saw him get out of the pocket and create and make some big-time plays happen. But I think it's just a different kind of task that you're asking from Darnold behind this offensive line. And so they improved for sure. I mean, it's not hard to improve when you're going from the worst line in football. Like, I think they'll be better, but I still think this is a bad pass-protecting line, and I think Darnold has the potential to get eaten alive by the opponent's pass rush all year long.
Yeah, I think it's still a bottom three offensive line in football. I mean, I don't want to give them too much credit there. I think it's still going to be really, brutal.
I just see some of these takes, man. People are going, Seattle's got one of the best lines in football this year. They're going to crush. And, like, I think they'll be a lot better in the running game. Again, I want to hammer that home, but pass pro, I'm nervous, man. I'm nervous.
Yeah, I think you absolutely should be nervous. I'm not really seeing the argument for being excited about Seattle's offensive line. I think it's still the major problem with this football team, and it's the reason that I am going to take them to finish last in this division. Like, it really does come down to basically exactly what you're talking about with the potential for them to lead the league in sacks taken. It's the combination of this terrible offensive line and then Sam Darnold's propensity to hold onto the ball and take a lot of sacks. And just as I was giving credit to the Rams for what they did in that playoff game against Minnesota, like, some of that is also just Sam truly being one of the worst quarterbacks in football when it comes to taking sacks that he's responsible for. And I think it's really interesting where if you look at the bottom line passing numbers for Sam Darnold last year, like when he's under pressure or versus the blitz, the passing numbers actually look really good. And like there were a lot of moments where he hung in there tough in the pocket and made a big time throw. But if you look at EPA, which is the more holistic measure of like your total value added, he's totally average under pressure and versus the blitz. And the reason for that is he took so many sacks. And even though Minnesota's pass protection last year was not good after losing Darisaw to injury, I still think they were very good at like mitigating the consequences of that through elite play calling, committing to the run on early downs, that being a huge part of their identity, and having obviously Justin Jefferson and just an elite group of receivers in general. That's where like I don't want to knock Darnold. I think his biggest problem as a quarterback is he holds onto the ball for the longest time in the NFL, despite the fact that he's not one of the elite athletes or creators who like should be leading that category. And then the fact that he just takes too many sacks. But it's not so much about, oh, Darnold still has these big issues. I think that Darnold got way better. I think Darnold had a really impressive season. It's more so, this is a fucking tough spot for any quarterback. And that's why I give Geno so much grace. And that's why I think Geno's underrated. I don't think a lot of people appreciate just how insane it was for him to have to play behind this offensive line with such a limited run game, having that burden on him every week. I do like Clint Kubiak coming in as your OC. And so I wonder if maybe he can help improve the run game. But like at the end of the day, I just don't know if they have the personnel. They were clearly below average running the ball last year. I still don't think they can protect. I also think the receiver room is so reliant on JSN, who I think is really good, but I just don't like the depth. And they bring in Kupp. I still think Kupp is solid, but can you count on him to play more than 10 games for you? Probably not. So I just see a lot of ways in which Geno was kind of holding this offense together by a string. And now that he's gone, things might fall apart, and this could be one of the worst offenses in football. The reason I hesitate about having them finish last is I do really like this defense, and I think that they could make up for a lot of those offensive issues. But it's a tough division. Everybody's in the same range, and I think we're going to have more Geno Smith appreciators after this year. I think seeing what he does with the Raiders and seeing how the Seahawks look without him.
The Geno hate's always been dumb, man. I mean, we still get it. Like, people have been blowing up that top 10 QBs graphic. And
oh, Geno.
Yes.
Yeah, he's tough. He's like that. He's got a sick arm. He's extremely accurate. He's got massive balls to hang tough in the pocket. He can also move around inside and outside of the pocket. Fucking see how your favorite quarterback looks behind that Seattle offensive line, buddy. Not a lot of fun. And unfortunately, Sammy Darnold might get a little bit of that treatment this year. Let's talk about the Niners, Logan. Obviously, very disappointing season for them last year. You go from a Super Bowl appearance being a drive away from a Super Bowl victory to missing the playoffs entirely. What is your hot take for them for this coming season?
This is probably my most lukewarm take of the episode, but I think the Niners offense improves without Deebo Samuel. I hesitate to take any big picture things with the Niners. I'm not super optimistic about this team heading into the season. They lost 8 starters. I think they've got a lot of aging and often injured stars. And so when I look at this team's recipe and their potential to return to, the Niners that we've come to know and love, like, I'm not super confident. Like, banking on Trent staying at the level that he's been at, when I think he's been this offense's best player for the last few seasons, right? I'm just nervous. McCaffrey staying healthy when he is this team's best offensive skill player, I am nervous about. They lost some defensive personnel. Like, I just don't think this Niners team is the same team that it was 2 years ago. And then, moving forward, they are going to be paying Brock Purdy this egregious amount of money. I want to be clear about something. I do like Brock Purdy as a starting quarterback. I think Brock Purdy is a good starter. He is like a middle-of-the-road, average to good starter. I don't think he's like an elevator of talent, but I think he's a competent guy that if you put talent around him, he can succeed. He's a guy that I would pay $25 to $30 million a year, not what they did pay him. All that being said, I do think they are primed to improve without Deebo Samuel. I just think Ricky Pearsall and Jawan Jennings are just better. Like, I think that those guys are going to feast this year with more opportunity. Brock Purdy loves hitting Ayuk. I thought it was a down year for Ayuk. He was also injured. So I think this offense is going to take a leap. Pearsall, I love. I think he's a complete wide receiver. Jennings, I feel the same way. Like, I just think that Deebo was the fourth best wide receiver out of that group last year. And now that he's out of the group, I think they're primed to get better. They were the 13th offense last year. I think I could see this group returning to top 10 status with health from Trent, from McCaffrey, from everybody. Kyle Shanahan always gives offensive output, but ultimately, because we're probably not going to talk about – we're eventually going to talk about all these teams when we rank them, but I couldn't take a big picture take because, I don't know, man. I think the Niners win like 8 or 9 games this year.
All right, well, get ready for a big picture take. The Niners are coming back to the playoffs.
Wow.
You heard it here first.
Okay.
Now, I have some hesitations about this. First of all, the biggest struggle with the Niners always is betting on health, like any modicum of health, really, because we've seen the seasons that have been derailed for them. If it's this past year, if it's 2020, it's because all of their best players basically at once get hurt, which is crazy, but not as much so when you are built upon numerous very injury-prone players. I mean, obviously, CMC is the biggest one who you look at right now, and you're like, is it more reasonable to expect him to be healthy for a season or to not be healthy? And is it reasonable to expect him to come back and look like he did in 2023? I don't know if he's ever getting quite back to that level, but I do think the weapons here are really good overall. And like you, I really like Jawan Jennings, and I really like Ricky Pearsall, and I still think the totality of those guys being your third and fourth targets, with George Kittle, who I consider the best tight end in football, still so damn good as a receiver and elite as a blocker, and Ayuk, like, and then if you do get at least star CMC, you're back to sort of the vision of this Niners offensive machine that we've seen with the great play calling of Shanahan, with Brock Purdy, who can execute this offense at a higher level than Jimmy G ever could. I'm not the highest on Brock. I do think with this contract, it's worth noting that at least for a couple years, the cap hit is pretty low. Like, through 2027, you're only talking about an 8% cap hit next year in 2026, a 9% cap hit in 2027. So I like how they structured the contract in that way. And even though I think that the public opinion and the consensus on Brock probably dropped a decent bit this past year, my view of him really didn't. I think the consensus just came closer to where I had already been with Brock. And I know that last year, like, the efficiency numbers weren't as great as they were in the previous couple years, and the turnover numbers are higher, and maybe the timing wasn't as precise within the offense. But also, he was obviously put in a more difficult situation than he had been previously, and I actually think he did a pretty solid job of holding things together for that Niners offense. And bottom line, we know that when you do optimize the situation around him, Brock Purdy can be the starting quarterback for some elite offenses. We've seen that. And I also think last year, even as much of a disaster as it felt like, even with the injuries, like, the offense wasn't the problem. They were 11th in points per drive. And I think you get them healthy offensive line, healthy weapons. Trent is still a monster when he's out there, like, absolutely dominant. I think this offense could be back to being pretty elite. Really, the problem last year for the Niners was really bad defense and really bad special teams, like catastrophic special teams that just cost them a few really weird, really close games. I mean, not having a kicker available cost them a football game. There's just a lot of weird stuff with that. And then the defense, where they did lose a few really talented players. Hufanga, Greenlaw, Hargrave, all went to different teams this year. But also, all those guys were hurt for basically the entirety of last season anyway. So it's tough to view them as losses from last year. They're more so losses from 2023. I do think the interior defensive line is a big question for this defense. I have some questions about the secondary. Like, I don't think the defense is very deep overall. But you're counting on a couple of superstars. Bosa, Fred Warner, absolute dominant football players. You're counting on Lenore being the best guy in that secondary, and you're counting on Robert Saleh coming back and turning things around, which I don't think is totally unreasonable to expect improvement from Saleh's return. Like, no, I don't think he can just single-handedly fix things, but I think he's a really good defensive coach. I think you see even the Jets after firing him, I mean, their defense regressed in his absence. So do I think this is going to be some defensive revolution for them? No, but I think they can be mediocre. And I think they improve in every phase. I think their special teams will not be as actively horrible as they were. I think their offense could be back like flirting with some top 5 stuff. I mean, why not, man? If they can execute the sort of Shanahan zone run based scheme at a really, really high level, if CMC is able to do that, and if they can block reasonably well, and then you have the potential for this efficient passing game with good weapons and with Purdy capable of executing that, like, I just think they're in for a pretty big bounce back. And crucially, the biggest thing I want to emphasize is the schedule is the easiest in football. They have an opponent winning percentage of 41.5. They only have 4 playoff opponents on their schedule. Like, it's actually crazy. We're talking about how the NFC East, well, they have to play the 2 toughest divisions in football. The Niners play their division. They play the AFC South and they play the NFC South. So they're playing arguably the 2 weakest divisions in football, their own division then, which is pretty wide open as we've talked about, and they get a last place schedule where they're playing the Browns, the Giants, and the Bears. So they don't play an elite football team all season, at least not on paper, not right now. The Bucs might be their toughest game all year. So I don't view the Niners as contenders. I don't view this as a full 180 of a season. I don't think they're getting back to 2023 heights. Like, I think their roster has clearly regressed, and I always do worry about health with them, and specifically the defense. I just think is not nearly what it was a few years ago. I more so think a lot of shit went really wrong for them last year, where they'll have some bounce backs, and there's just a big opportunity with the schedule here.
Yeah, and I was just going to add, I'm glad you mentioned that, the setbacks they had last year and some of the disastrous like endings of games. I don't want to give the Niners an out because ultimately they did lose all of these games. I mean, they had 3 or 4 games last year in division that came down to the wire and were just devastating collapses where, like, inexcusable losses. And again, I don't want to just wipe that away and immediately go, oh, those 3 or 4 games are going to flip, but legitimately, you know, one thing goes differently. This wide receiver doesn't drop this pass, or
I mean, dude,
and they're right back there last
it was
year.
Special teams,
yeah, even with the injury. So I think that's important to mention. Just like, I think their record's a little bit deceiving from last season.
Yeah, basically everything that could go wrong for the Niners went wrong. I still think, again, big picture, if you compare them to where they were at from 2019, their first Super Bowl appearance, to 2023, their next Super Bowl appearance, compared to that 5-year run of dominance outside of 2020 when they were super hurt, there's no question the Niners are trending down, but compared to last year, I think they're going to trend back up. And I do think Shanahan is awesome, and I just think he's as good an offensive coach as there is, and he's going to get a lot out of this group that also does have a lot of talent. Let's talk about the Cardinals, Logan. What is your hot take about them?
I think the Cardinals have a top 5 offense this upcoming season.
Ooh.
Yeah, I'm excited about what the Cardinals are cooking. I wanted to pick them to win the division, admittedly. I think they improved defensively. I think this team has taken I think the defense improved throughout the season last year. The Cardinals' defense at the beginning of the year, I thought, improved a lot. They got picked apart, especially in the secondary, and they've made some additions. Ultimately, not enough for me to pick them to win the division, but I am very, very high on this offense. One, Kyler Murray is one more year removed from a significant knee injury, and I hope that we see a return in terms of some of the self-creation and the mobility and the out-of-structure stuff that we've come to know and love with Kyler Murray. I thought it was a good year, I thought, for Kyler, but a down year where I still expect more from him. More importantly, I'm expecting leaps from Marvin Harrison Jr. and Michael Wilson. I think another year of development from those guys. Marv, I expect to blossom into this bona fide number one superstar receiver. Everybody's talking about how he's improved in terms of adding muscle. The guy's technically proficient. He's got great hands. And so I think you add some physicality to the guy. I think he's going to be a real problem to deal with. And I think the passing game takes another leap. But the strength of this team, I don't want to undersell it, was James Conner in this running game. It's really a level of faith in this offensive line and their ability to establish the ground game. They were the number 2 rushing offense in terms of yards per attempt. They were the number 7 rushing offense overall. And they were the number 8 third down offense last season. So I'm expecting them to at least stay there and the passing game take a pretty major leap. I really like this offensive line, man. I think it's one of the most underrated in football. I like Froholt, the center. I like Paris Johnson, the tackle. I think it's an underrated group, and so I'd really like to take the Cardinals to win the division. I thought that was going to be my hot take about this division. I ultimately just have a little bit more faith in the Rams, but they're number 2 to me. I could see the Cardinals winning 9 or 10 games and getting into the wild card. It's close between them and the Niners, but I do prefer the Cardinals, and a lot of that is based on the laurels of this offense. So I expect Kyler to get better. I think Wilson and Marvin Harrison Jr. take a leap, and I think the running game and the offensive line stand pat or maybe marginally improve. But I think the offense is going to be one of the best in the league next year.
I can see it, man. I mean, they were 6th in yards per drive last year. They were 9th in points per drive. I think the run game is super effective, obviously, with the constant rushing threat and production that you
I didn't even bring up
from Kyler.
Trey McBride, man. Trey McBride's coming back too, dude. One of the best tight ends in football.
Yeah, I mean, I considered my hot take for the Cardinals being that they have 2 1,200-yard receivers. I think that Trey McBride and Marvin Harrison Jr. could emerge as one of the absolute best receiver tight end duos in football. Top 5 might require a level of consistency from Kyler that we just haven't quite seen. And that's kind of the frustration with him, where there are the highs where you just look at the raw arm talent, you look at the ability to create out of structure, you look at obviously the elite mobility, and it's like, man, that Kyler Murray is something else. And then there's the stretches where it's like the decision making can be a problem, and he's not as consistent a pocket passer as you would like him to be. And so there's just kind of ups and downs with this team, and that's how last year was, right? I mean, they started the year not so well, then they kind of went roaring hot into the bye, and then they came out of the bye super cold, and the bottom line result is just this very mediocre 8-9 team. And so this isn't really a hot take, I guess, but I think the Cardinals are the most mid team in football. I think if I had to pick one team that is right down the middle, 8-9, book it, it's probably the Cardinals. I think the offense is good. I think the line is solid. I think Kyler is a slightly above average quarterback. I think their weapons are above average as well. And then I think the defense is a little bit below average. I do like them bringing in Calais, bringing in Dalvin Tomlinson, adding a couple of big boys up front. I love Budda Baker, obviously, at safety.
Josh Sweat, too.
And they bring in Josh Sweat, too. So I think that they've added talent up front. I still think there's a lot of questions in totality with this defense, the totality of the linebacking core, the secondary. Are they going to be able to really generate pressure? I don't know. I just see a lot of mediocrity there. And this was a defense that was not good last year, that has added talent, but was 28th in yards allowed per drive, 21st in points allowed per drive. So I'm not expecting too much improvement from them on that side of the ball. I think there's just a lot of things you look at and you're like, yeah, they're in the range of being fine. I think that Gannon is a fine coach. I just can't really talk myself into playoff hype for the Cardinals, but I also know that they're not going to bottom out. They're too good to that. So they get the award of being the most mid team in football, according to me. Let's move on to what is, in my opinion, the strongest division in football. The biggest, the largest, the NFC North, Logan. What a fearsome foursome it is. You would know a thing or two about that. Let's start with the Detroit Lions. What is your hot take for them coming off of a 15-win season, but a playoff disappointment?
I'm rooting for the Lions. I hope the Lions replicate their success last season, win the division.
Dan Campbell's going to bite your kneecap, man. He's going to bite your kneecap.
Going to run. I'm not about to say nothing negative. We can go bite some kneecaps together, Dan. Get me out there.
Nice.
You know what? You know who'd be really good at biting kneecaps?
OJ.
Matt Stafford, man. I bet that dude could bite the hell out of a kneecap.
I literally said that already. I said that earlier this episode. Do you listen when I speak, or
not really?
Is it just Gunna playing in your head
all the time?
Yeah.
Actually, I have I think it's I have a cochlear implant in my head, just plays Gunna the entire time.
Awesome.
Dude, you know what I found out recently that really ticked me off?
Is it going to be about the anatomy of the inner ear?
You remember Ike Taylor?
Of course.
Ike Taylor said that he had an MP3 player playing music during football games, and I think that's the reason he got burnt so much, man.
In both ears or one ear?
I don't know, but he said he was playing music during games, and I think that attributes to why he was getting cooked so bad on game day.
You hate Ike Taylor.
I do hate Ike Taylor, man. That guy he gets the most amount of like undue credit for being he was a lockdown, he was clamps, and he was a great tackler. He actually sucked, and he was propped up by an all-time great defense. Anyway, I digress. I think this guy is an all-time defensive talent. He is my focal point of this Lions take. I think Aiden Hutchinson leads the NFL in sacks. The rate that this guy was on at the beginning of the year, in 5 games, he had 27 pressures. The guy had 7.5 sacks. He had 5, I believe, in one game against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers before he got injured. I think he's one of those guys, the TJ Watts of the world, the Myles Garretts of the world, the guys that we hail and prop up as the best in the NFL. I think Aiden Hutchinson is a freak of nature, and if the guy could just stay healthy, I think he's going to win Defensive Player of the Year. I think he's going to lead the NFL in sacks. I think he is destined to be the best edge rusher in the NFL one day. And so this year, I am predicting his ascension. I think he takes a leap and leads the NFL in sacks. That's my take.
I think that is very possible. I mean, Hutchinson was on clear Defensive Player of the Year pace, and then obviously just really unfortunate injury for an entire Lions team that suffered so many injuries. And last year was so impressive when you consider that, even though the playoffs were a disappointment, like losing their best defensive player after 5 games. Ali McNeil, who was so good for them, misses the end of the season with injury. Carlton Davis missed the end of the season with injury. Alex Anzalone missed the second half of the regular season. He actually came back for the playoff game, but that defense was just so decimated. And then you get that plus one Goff meltdown at the worst possible moment, and that's what held them back in the playoffs. So I think it's important to understand, like, they were just down so much talent at the end of the year compared to what they had at full strength on paper. And I still think that, like, the level to which they were able to improve and find a way defensively was really impressive. And I think you have to give Aaron Glenn a lot of credit for that. But Aaron Glenn is gone now, Logan. And Ben Johnson is gone now, Logan. And Frank Ragnow is gone now. And Kevin Zeitler is gone now. And I hate to doubt the Lions at all, because if you want to talk about a team that's already endured adversity and excelled, that's what they did last year. I don't think they win the NFC North this year. This division is so damn good. And I do think this team is going to take a little bit of a step back. Defensively, I think that they can be definitely as good overall as last year. I think the loss of Aaron Glenn matters. I don't think if they suffered those same kind of injuries, they would be as good as they were last year. But I just hope that they're healthier. And, like, I still think their defensive line, once they get Aleem McNeil back from torn ACL, brutal, like, that's a dominant defensive front. Their safety tandem is the best in football with Brian Branch and Kirby Joseph. I love Anzalone and Jack Campbell as their linebacker duo. Like, the corners are solid. They lose Carlton Davis, who is very good, but they add DJ Reed, who is very good, so that's not a big difference. Like, I think they're probably a top 10 defense, which is a win when you think about where the Lions were a few years ago defensively. I do think we'll see a drop offensively, though, and that drop is coming from a ridiculous place where the Lions averaged 33 points per game this past season. That puts them in an exclusive club in NFL history. But the ultimate foundation of that offense was we are going to absolutely physically destroy you up front. We are going to get unparalleled push. We have ridiculous pass protection. We can run the ball down your throat at will. We can protect for Goff out of play action at such a high level. And when you lose both Ragnow and Zeitler, like, I just think we're looking at a big drop-off for this interior offensive line. Another huge strength of this team was their play calling. Ben Johnson, I thought, was the best offensive coordinator in football, and now you're without him. So, like, I still think this offense is going to be really good because I think the weapons are still awesome. I mean, to have top 3 passing targets of Amon-Ra, Jamison Williams, Laporta, that's crazy. Jahmyr Gibbs is one of the best running backs in football. Him and Montgomery makes a case for being the best backfield in football. But 2 of the superpowers that made this offense special are gone. And so I don't think it's at all unreasonable to say, okay, maybe now they go from the number 1 offense to the number 8 offense, just because I don't think they can execute at the same relentless level. Like, we can just outside zone you to death because we're that great with our 5 guys blocking up front. There's going to be a step back taken there. And they've got the second hardest schedule in the NFL. It is so ridiculous, bro. They play 11 playoff teams from last year, Logan. They have the toughest division in football. There's not a gimme game in division. The Vikings won 14 games last year. The Packers won 11. The Bears are significantly improved on paper. And then on top of that, they have to go to Baltimore, to Kansas City, to Washington, to Philly, to LA to play the Rams, to Cincinnati. They host the Bucs. They host the Steelers. Like, are there 6 losses in there? I think there easily could be. That's just so many good teams. And are you winning this division, this NFC North, at 11-6? Probably not. So I still think come playoff time, the Lions are probably a big threat. I just think they have a lot of talent on both sides of the ball. I think they are really, really one of the great cultures in the NFL, and I do give Dan Campbell so much credit for that. But they're losing, like, really the mind behind the offense, the mind behind the defense, both of whom were great. They're losing some important players. And I just think it's a lot of change at once with really no time to catch your breath on the schedule. No easy games, no easy weeks. That's where I just think it'll be difficult for them to replicate that kind of regular season success.
Yeah, I mean, this is going to be the true test of Dan Campbell's mettle as a head coach. You know, this ability to withstand this kind of roster turnover and change. If there is anybody that can withstand it, I would bet on Dan Campbell. I'm impressed that you went with a big picture declaration about any of these teams because I kind of stayed away from them because I think the NFC North is not wide open, but I mean all these teams are really, really talented. So I could kind of see it going any different, a bunch of different directions. But do you still think the Lions are going to be a playoff team?
I do. Okay. I absolutely do. I mean, I think that they'll be the strongest wild card team in the NFC, probably. But I do have somebody else winning the division, Logan. So what's your hot take for the Minnesota Vikings?
Wow.
By the way, I'm not saying anything.
Okay,
I'm not saying
we'll see.
Who I have winning the division. We'll see.
I have Minnesota as I think Minnesota has the largest regression of any NFL team this year. And
wow.
The first part of this is because they are coming from a very high place where they won 14 games. Now, I have a positive take for the Vikings. If you were a Vikings fan and you were currently trying to cut your ears off, I think the Vikings could have the number 1 defense in the NFL next season. I am so high on this defense. I love Brian Flores. Everybody that has listened to this show and has heard me talk about Brian Flores, I sing his praises all the time. I think the guy is brilliant with his schemes, the deception. He's brilliant. He is a genius, and I think this defense is exceptionally talented. Allen, Phillips, Hargrave, Grenard, all on the front defensive line. Cashman, Pace, Van Ginkel. This is like a fucking all-pro defense. That's one of the reasons.
The front 7 is insane.
Why I love them. And then the secondary isn't anything to shake a stick at. Like Harrison Smith and Byron Murphy as a foundation of your secondary is extremely strong. I like Metellus, too, as the other safety. But the reason that I'm picking this is very simple. They have a rookie quarterback who I don't believe in too much starting for them. And shout out J.J. McCarthy. I am rooting for the kid. It's his first year starting, coming off of a big injury. The Vikings made their bed last season when they drafted him. They made their decision. And honestly, ironically, I think that year of prep time behind Sam Darnold probably gave McCarthy a little bit more time to figure out this offense, figure out the play calling, gain camaraderie with the skill position guys in the offensive line. So I think it could have benefited him, but he is coming off of a major injury. I wasn't that high on McCarthy coming into the draft process, and they do play in a very tough division, and I am kind of hedging my bets with this take. I'm not saying they're not going to be good. I'm not saying that they're not going to win, 9, 10 games. That's very possible, but when I look at the potential regression from any of these teams, I could see them very easily losing 4 to 5 more games than they did last season and going from 14 wins to 10 wins. More realistically, even if this defense is elite, I think Minnesota probably wins 8 games next year. And that is going to equate to a 6-win drop-off, and I think they are the most likely candidate to have a large regression gap, just for the simple fact that they've got a rookie signal caller starting for them that I don't have the most faith in. McCarthy could very well prove himself. He could very well get propped up, too, by a good offensive situation with good infrastructure, but I'm not going to bet on it. And let me be clear about something, too. I'm not out on McCarthy long-term, too. I think 2-3 years from now, McCarthy could be the starter for the Vikings on a very good team. I just don't think it's going to be in year one, and there's no tape on him, and I wasn't the highest on McCarthy as a prospect. So that's why I am making this take for Minnesota.
Feels like really all of the trepidation about Minnesota kind of has to be centered around J.J. McCarthy. And for me, that's the case. I think he's the only thing holding them back from being pretty much a surefire contender in my book, because this is legitimately, I think, the best situation I've ever seen for a quote-unquote rookie quarterback walking into. It's effectively his rookie season. The offensive line, I think, is looking really good with Darrisaw healthy, bringing in Ryan Kelly and Will Fries. They've significantly upgraded there.
Sorry, not to cut you off. Do you intentionally put that in quotations because he's a second-year guy? Because I would say, I think 2016 Dak, or are you only considering first-round QBs maybe? Because I don't know. The two guys that I would say that probably had concretely better situations, rookie Ben, when he stepped in with that Steelers team, and then rookie Dak, I think. But this is an elite team to step into.
Yeah, I mean, those are two good shouts. I was thinking more so about the offense, the surroundings there, where I don't think Ben quite stacks up. Dak, though, you're right, might have had it even better, because that offensive line was ridiculous. Zeke was amazing that season. The run game was so good. He had
I would hear it for a first-round QB, though.
Yeah, you know what? I'm modifying my take for a first-round QB, because I think you're right. I think Dak's situation was even better. But, offensive line should be much stronger. He's got the best receiver on the planet. He's got an awesome receiving tight end. He's got an awesome wide receiver, too, after he serves a 3-game suspension. By the way, man, too many stuff with receivers and driving. Receivers, stop driving. I guess that's my take.
Get a chauffeur, bro. Cop the Uber.
Get a chauffeur, dude. It's crazy. But he's got all that going for him, and then he's got a great play caller in Kevin O'Connell, one of my favorites in football, who I think is going to do a nice job of trying to take pressure off of JJ's plate. This is a team that already was pretty intentional and consistent about running on first down, running on early downs to set up the play action. And even though their run game wasn't super efficient last year, it was still effective in accomplishing its objective of setting up the play action game, right? Just gaining progress consistently. That's what they did on the ground, and I think that they'll hopefully, for them, be able to do that even a little bit more efficiently this year. And then the defense is phenomenal, like you mentioned. I mean, they are just pressure machines. They've got this insane front seven. Flores is going to dial up so many blitzes. Their run defense was awesome. They do lose Cal legend Cam Bynum at safety, which I have to knock them for. And I think the secondary would be the only question about this defense. I still think it's solid. And then maybe a little bit of turnover regression because they led the league in takeaways last year. But when you have a mind like this, when you have the talent up front, which improved, they add Jonathan Allen, they add Hargrave, hoping he can stay healthy. Like, they've got everything. This is a team that won 14 games and their overall roster got better. I just don't know if I trust J.J. McCarthy to execute this offense at the necessary level for them to be as successful as last year or be a real contender. Because even though Darnold melted down in the last 2 games of the season, like, let's not mince words, and those were the 2 playoff environment games, the Lions, even with that banged up defense, just sent 0 blitz after 0 blitz after him, and he absolutely freaked out and played a terrible football game. And then he took 9 sacks against the Rams, and they were also able to just totally rattle him with pressure. But I don't want that to override how good Darnold was in totality last year for the Vikings, and expecting J.J. McCarthy to step in and match 4,300 passing yards, 35 touchdowns. Like, Darnold was a top 3 play action quarterback last year by basically every metric. Yards out of play action, touchdowns, passer rating, the passing efficiency that you got from Darnold with that kind of volume. I just can't see that. Like, this is the best situation he could be dropped into, but I still need to see, like, is the ability to deliver under pressure there? How good is the anticipation as a passer? He's got pretty good accuracy. He's got pretty good mobility. But, like, even at Michigan, he just wasn't asked to do that much. And I'm not saying he's going to be asked to do a ton in this offense, but he's being asked to execute, like, a Super Bowl caliber offense. I just think that's a big leap, and I'm not the most confident in JJ doing it. And if he doesn't look good in this situation, I think that is concerning in and of itself. But it's interesting you say the most regression. I end up just, like, viewing Minnesota as more of like a 10-11 win wild card team this year than winning 14 games again. I love everything about the bones of this roster. It's just the quarterback that gives me some pause.
I do too. There's just a lot on McCarthy's plate year 1.
There is. How about another quarterback who's got a lot on his plate heading into year 2, same class as J.J. McCarthy? Caleb Williams and the Chicago Bears. Some are calling them reigning offseason champs, but the first offseason championship didn't translate to on-the-field success as they would have hoped. Does that change this year, Logan? What's your take for the Bears?
Yeah, my take for the Bears is I think they have 3 1,000-yard receivers. I think the Bears are going to air the hell out of the ball this season. And there's just such a large improvement offensively from them, like especially with what they did on the offensive line, adding a guy like Tooney, adding a guy like Dahlman. Like, I'm super excited for Caleb to actually have a line in front of him this year. This doesn't, and I want to be clear about something, this doesn't have as much to do with Caleb as it does with the additions of Ben Johnson and the offensive line and the wide receiver group. I still think there are some technical things that Caleb needs to get better at, like in terms of accuracy and getting the ball out on time and within structure. Like, there are just some, like, little details that I think Caleb needs to get better at, but I'm still very, very high on his talent. And I think if there's any guy that is going to step in here and really harness this ability and this talent, it's Ben Johnson. And so I think with a full year, with the additions that they've made up front, but especially with this receiving group, like, I think it could be Kmet. I think Kmet and Moore could do it. I think it could be Moore and Adunze, Burden. Like, there's just a lot of receiving talent that I like. I really like those 4 guys, and I think 3 of those 4 guys are going to notch a band with Caleb. I don't anticipate this being like an elite running game, so I think they're going to have to lean really heavily on Caleb creating and throwing through the air. And I think that this is going to be an explosive offense in year 2. I think that Caleb's going to throw for over 4,000 yards, and I think he's going to spread the wealth throughout this receiving group. I do think they're one of the offseason champs, man. I hope it's not a big-ass letdown like it was last season, and I just can't really imagine it being that with all the investments they made in the offensive line. You know, they're not trotting out 5th and 6th and 7th round and undrafted rookies. You know, they got dogs up front in front of Caleb. They've got a brilliant mind behind him. Not to hedge my bets, It may not be immediate. You may not see it week 1, week 2, but I think as the season goes along, I think we're going to see a lot of improvement in the Bears offense, and I think they have 3 1,000-yard receivers.
That is bold. That's a big number. I also really, really like what the Bears did this offseason. In fact, I think that they pretty much nailed it. And yet, unfortunately, my hot take is that they still finish last in this division. I don't know if that's really hot because this division is good.
Is it just the division? Is it a Caleb thing? Like, what is it to you?
It's mostly just the division being this good that I think every other team is going to win double-digit games. And so that doesn't really make it a failure of a season if the Bears still improve as they hope to and if they win 8 or 9 games and just feel like things are trending in the right direction. But I think, that's kind of disappointing just when you look at that bottom line result. I do think it has more to do, though, with how good everybody around them is. And, I just look at the other rosters and I go, yeah, I still think they're better. I still think they're better. I still think they're better. But I really, really like the direction that the Bears have taken things. I am a big Ben Johnson guy. I think that he is a brilliant offensive mind. I think that what we have seen from him publicly as a culture setter for the Bears, that's been encouraging too. And for God's sakes, he's not Matt Eberflus. So that is a massive upgrade. That coaching staff was such a disaster for Chicago last year. They totally overhaul the offensive line, which I really like, bringing in Tooney and Dahlman and Jonah Jackson. I think that's a big upgrade, and that's where I don't know if I agree with you on viewing the Bears as an offense that's probably going to air things out a lot. I think that it'll be interesting to see Ben Johnson in a different setting, but we know that with Detroit, that man loved running the football first and foremost. He loved that outside zone over and over again, and it seems to me like he probably built an offensive line to be able to implement maybe some of that same identity. Obviously, you want an offensive line for everything. It's essential to both the pass and the run game. But I just don't know if being all right, Caleb, here are the keys. Everything's on your shoulder. Go out there and sling around the football is a good idea considering how last year went. I think he needs more structure. I think he needs more help basically all around. But I do think this is going to be a better year from Caleb. I think he has to improve in terms of making quicker decisions with the football, getting rid of it, not trying to play hero ball as much, just limiting the number of really bad sacks that he's taking, and just overall executing within structure, right? Play action, making quicker reads, being more accurate as a thrower of the football. There's a lot that Caleb had to improve upon last year, but having the sort of terrible play calling and terrible offensive line play on the interior that he did had certainly just made life harder on him. So I think he'll take a step forward. The talent is there in the receiving room, and it's not just DJ and Rome and Luther Burden. It's also Cole Kmet and Colston Loveland. So they have invested so much in the pass catchers and just the overall offensive infrastructure. I think it's good. I just think you could only expect so much of a leap from Caleb this year, and I'm still high on him. But do I think he is instantaneously going from what he was last year to on a top half starting quarterback? Probably not. I think that's a little much to expect from this year. And then defensively, I think that they are very solid, but I think that they're probably going to be pretty average on that side of the ball. And so I end up kind of looking at them and thinking solid all around. That's not good enough in this division to make the playoffs or to finish anything other than last, probably.
Maybe. I don't know. I think the Bears are they're really interesting. I don't know. The defense was really good last year. That's why, if you do see an improvement, the offense is legitimately bad. If you do see them take a leap,
I don't know if I could say the defense was really good last year. I mean, they were 31st in yards per pass attempt allowed and 29th in yards per rush attempt allowed. Their bottom line better than that at just keeping teams from scoring. I think that there's solid talent here, but I just couldn't say really good.
They were on the field a lot last season, too. I just think they could take some of the pressure off. What does this look like to you? Well, actually, I'm going to ask a different question.
Sure.
First year Ben Johnson, second year Caleb Williams. What is a success to you for Chicago? How many wins?
Winning record. I think a winning record is a success. And I think they can absolutely do that and still be last in the division. if the Bears don't improve by at least 3 wins, if they aren't at least an 8-win team that is like around 500 all year, then I'll be disappointed. And I think that they should at least be that. That's where I don't want to come across like I'm low on the Bears, because I'm a Caleb believer, and I think they're doing all the right things. It's just, this is going to be a process, I think. And they're just in a tough spot to literally win games. I think every team in the NFC North is going to end up better than their record, because they all have to play each other, and they also all have to play tough divisions on top of that. Like, it's tough. That's the challenge. Let's talk about the Green Bay Packers, Logan. Last team in this loaded division. What is your hot take about them?
I'm going to say their first-round pick, Matthew Golden, wins Rookie of the Year. And I think this is hot because it's a pretty loaded group that we're looking at. I know a lot of people would take Cam Ward. I think Cam's going to have a good year, but I think there's going to be a lot of highs, and I also think there's going to be a lot of lows. I think he could have some very high turnover numbers. I don't think the Titans' offense is going to be like super successful immediately, and so I'm looking for someone who can check 2 boxes. Somebody who's going to put up those raw numbers needed to win an award like this, in which I think he is going to be the number 1 receiver for a team that throws the ball a lot. Jordan Love loves his deep balls. Matthew Golden is a guy who ran 4.29 in the 40. He's not like a perfect receiver by any means, but I think he's really quick. I think he's got great burst, and I think he's got really good hands. I think he's good short, medium, and deep. He can be a little inconsistent in his route running, but I think he's got all the tools necessary to step in and take on the number 1 role. But also, again, I think he's going to have to be a contributor to a really good offense, in which I think the Packers could be. His main competition to me isn't Cam Ward or Travis Hunter. I think Gene T is probably the guy that I'm looking at, just because he is going to get a lot of touches. And that, to me, is where the boldness of this take is because he's going to have to beat Gene T out. But I think he can put up 1,000 yards as a rookie. I think 6 or 7 touchdowns. I think he's going to have to go beyond that a little bit to win this award. Like, he'll probably have to put up 1,200 to 1,300 with those kind of touchdown numbers, but I think it's doable. And I think he's going to be the number 1 receiver immediately for this group. But I didn't even mention Amarian Hampton. I mean, he's probably going to split touches a little bit with a guy like Najee Harris. But there's a lot of talent offensively, I think, for rookies. And that's what makes this bold. But Gene T, to me, is probably his toughest competition.
Yeah, I think if you look at how Offensive Rookie of the Year tends to go, I mean, pretty much if there's a pretty good quarterback season, that guy's probably going to get the award. So
I just don't really see it with the quarterbacks this year. I don't think Dart's going to play a ton. Again, I think Ward is probably going to be about even in terms of touchdowns and turnovers. Yeah. And there's just a lot of responsibility on his plate. So I do think it's going to go to a skill position guy this year.
I think I tend to agree. Cam Ward is the quarterback who you look at as a potential candidate, but I think it's probably going to be Genty. I mean, I just think as a running back, it's so easy to be so productive when you're that good off the bat. There's less of a learning curve than like any other position. But I like the spirit of the take, because I'm feeling high on the Packers this year, man. I think they win the division. So they are the team that I have unseating Detroit in the regular season. I thought our buddy Theo put it very well the other day. I can't remember if the cameras were even rolling for this, Logan. You know, the lines can be so blurred. I mean, in today's day and age with social media and the internet, it feels like damn near our lives are a performance. It feels like maybe we're always on camera. Maybe we're always on stage. But, God, that's profound. Fucking A, that's good stuff. Anyways, what he said was the Packers have basically built as good a team as you can without having stars at the key positions. They don't have an elite edge rusher. They don't have an elite receiver. They don't have an elite tackle, but they're still really damn good. And this team across the board, like, pretty much awesome in every facet of the game. Top 3 in passing efficiency, 6th in rushing efficiency, 6th in points per drive on offense, 11th in pass defense in terms of net yards per attempt allowed, 3rd in run defense by yards per attempt allowed, 6th in scoring defense on a per drive basis. Like, really good all around. The problem was just they couldn't get over the hump against the elite teams within their division, really. They go 0-4 against Detroit and Minnesota, 11-2 versus everybody else. I do think there are more questions about both Detroit and Minnesota this year, as we've talked about. And even if you look at last year, like the margins were pretty slim. All of Green Bay's losses tended to be pretty close. 5 of the 6 in the regular season were by 5 points or fewer. And so with some of the questions I have about the other two, I think Green Bay is more so trending up. Like, I feel really good about their offense. I think LaFleur is an amazing coach. I love their scheme. Elite rushing attack, and Josh Jacobs was so good last year. You got to give him credit. But set up high efficiency play action, high efficiency RPOs in tandem with that. Not a volume passing attack last year. Actually, one of the lowest volume passing offenses in football, but I still think their quarterback is really good. And I'm a Jordan Love guy, and I feel a bit of a leap coming from him this year in terms of consistency. I think cutting out turnovers is going to be the point of emphasis with him, because last couple years it's been like a tale of two halves of the season with him when it comes to, there are stretches where it's multiple turnovers every week. There are stretches where it is 100% clean football.
Toyotathon.
The Toyotathon, it tends to coincide with the Toyotathon when he's playing his best. But he's got to be more consistent on a week-to-week basis. I just think it's in there. I think obviously the physical tools are there. I think he shows this ability to play such clean, turnover-free football for extended stretches. He's also incredible when it comes to not taking sacks, so he can really limit negative plays. He's just got to put it together for a 17-week season and then a playoff run. But I think he'll get better. Still a young quarterback, especially in terms of starting experience. And I also think the Golden Edition is a big deal. Like, I talked about them not having stars at those key positions. Clearly, they want to go out there and get a star receiver, and I think that will do good for Jordan Love, and I think that Golden is the best receiving talent in that room. So I think the passing attack is more dynamic, more reliable this year. And then the defense, I'm maybe not the highest on. I think they're good, not great. I do worry a little about maybe some turnover regression for them, where they were towards the top of the league in takeaways last year. And I do think it's not ideal when you don't have a high-end pass rusher or like a high-end cover corner. Again, it's just some of those premium positions lacking a little bit. That's why I struggle to view them as like a Super Bowl contender right now. But you look at how good they were last year, and I think there is potential for improvement. I think they can easily win 12 games. And even though their schedule is tough, it's not Detroit. They also have the advantage of just continuity, right? Everything is in place for them. They're a young team, still one of the youngest in football last year, that should be trending upwards. So I'm betting on the Packers.
Like I said earlier, I could see this division kind of going anywhere, but I think I'm still going to rock with the Lions, even though their schedule is tough. I just think they've built this reputation up for themselves, and I believe in them.
Okay, Boomer, have you ever heard that one?
Classic. So up to date, man.
6-7. How about your beloved Baker Mayfield and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Logan? What is your hot take for them? I'm going to guess Baker, 7,000 yards, 62 touchdowns, undefeated season, Super Bowl, and not just undefeated. The NFL actually folds. It ceases to exist, but not because ratings are down. Ratings actually reach unparalleled heights, 4 billion viewers for the Super Bowl. The problem is everybody else is too scared to even compete in the same league as Baker, and they all concede. And that's it. They're eternal Super Bowl champions, and Baker's eternal MVP.
You have to be reading my screen.
What can I say, Logan? I know you. Nogan. That's your new name. Is that your name? I guess I don't know you that well. I'm not really sure of your name.
I'm going to change it to Bogan for Baker Mayfield.
Hard.
Baker Mayfield leads out back-to-back top 5 offenses. Oh, yeah. Actually, I'm super confident in this take. The only thing that I'm nervous about is Mike Evans just coming off of his injury. I think Mike Evans is so imperative to the success of this offense that if he takes any bit of a ding, I'm probably not as confident in this. The other thing that I'm worried about are Tristan Wirfs, one of the best left tackles in football. He's probably going to miss the beginning of this season with a knee injury. If that knee injury persists through a significant portion of this season, I would say like week 4 or 5, I'm very nervous about this take, in which I would just say it's probably not going to happen. But if Evans, Godwin, and Wirfs are still relatively healthy and available, I think this is a no-brainer. This was one of the best dual threat attacks in football last season. Like, the only negative I could say about this was Baker Mayfield's turnover numbers. He led the league in interceptions, had a bunch of fumbles as well. But despite that, elite on the ground, took a major leap forward there with Bucky Irving leading the rushing attack. Rashad White added a dimension in the receiving game out of the backfield and some of that speed rushing. And this was one of the best passing attacks in football again last season because of Mike Evans, because of Godwin. To that group, they had Emeka Egbuka. I think he's going to be a monster year 1, too. Cade Otton was really good. So I see a team that is returning a lot of the same faces, that has a rock-solid offensive line, a dominant rushing attack, a lot of talent in the receiving room, and a quarterback I believe in. Again, my biggest concerns are probably just the injury factors with some of these guys, and then the loss of Liam Cohen.
Yeah.
But in the loss of Liam Cohen, they're promoting a guy that was there last season to their offensive coordinator spot. So I project continued success in the Buccaneers offense, considering their skill position continuity and their offensive continuity. The reason I didn't say that the Buccaneers are going to win this division are basically just the defense. I'm not as confident that this defense is going to be as great as they've been. They weren't great last season, but 2 years ago, that was the strength of this football team. I do wonder if they're going to be average again this season. This division's always kind of up for grabs because there's no dominant, team that's head and shoulders above everybody else. I'm not going to take the Bucs this year. I'm going to take a team that I, again, took last year, but I couldn't rule it out. I think the Bucs are going to win 9 or 10 games and be close to winning this division. There is a team that I do believe in just a little bit more.
I'm the Bucs truther on this podcast now, baby.
Yes! Yes!
I've got them
Super
winning
Bowl!
12 games, man.
Yes! I got a Woody right now!
I think the Bucs
I could
rock.
kiss you, Carson. I could fucking
I would
kiss
love
you,
that.
man.
God, I would love that. You know how many years I've waited for you to say that? You say it now, there's 3,000 miles between us and an audience of, how many people are watching this podcast right now? 40 million? Probably 40, 50 million live. What a
Tell me why you
on
love
New
Baker
Heights.
Mayfield. Tell
1
me why
million?
Baker Mayfield's winning MVP.
So it's actually not as much about Baker as you'd probably like it to be. I just think this offense is so stacked. I mean, it's a ridiculous top-tier offensive situation. The offensive line is elite once Wirfs gets back healthy. They had an elite run game last year with a really good running back room, and I would also mention Sean Tucker as like a third running back in that room who's a legitimate quality player. They already had one of the better wide receiver duos in football. Then they had a first-round receiver in Egbuka, who's so pro-ready, so complete as a prospect. This could be the best receiver trio in the NFL. And in fact, you had that take about the Bears having 3 1,000-yard receivers. I flirted with that for the Bucs. I think that's possible. And last year, Baker's production was already elite. The passing efficiency was elite. Like, this offense was dominant in every way, and they just got even more talented. So the only question, and it's not insignificant, is how do you proceed without Liam Cohen, who I did think was an excellent play caller and offensive mind. I don't know a ton about Josh Grizzard. He was under Mike McDaniel. He was under Cohen this past year, and I do think he had some significant offensive responsibilities. They probably take a slight hit just losing the mind of Liam Cohen, but they keep continuity with a guy who was already involved with this system, and they added even more talent. So it's really about the offense. I think, like, if you looked at me at the end of the year and you said, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers scored 31 points per game this year and they led the NFL, like, I honestly wouldn't blink. I would just flat out believe you. I think on paper, they're the most complete offense in football right now. I think purely on that side of the ball, they're like the strongest at every position when you just look at it in totality. There are teams with superhuman quarterbacks who maybe I trust more in a big spot, like Josh Allen with the Bills. But the totality of what they've built here is phenomenal. Defensively, I think they'll be pretty average. Like, I think you kind of know what you're getting. They'll be aggressive. It's the Todd Bowles identity. They don't really have high-end talent up front. Maybe you have some questions about the linebackers outside of Levante, who's still awesome. But will they get a bounce-back season from Hassan Reddick? That would be nice. He dipped way below his level of the previous few years last season. Secondary is solid. So it's not that I'm higher on this defense than you. I just think, like, they're going to pour a lot of points on teams. It is as completely stacked an offense as there is. And could you maybe run the table in your division with that formula? Like, I think it's possible. I think there's a gap to me on paper between the Bucs and the rest of the division. I'm that confident in the offense being elite.
I'm shocked.
Really?
I'm just shocked that you had anything positive to say about Baker Mayfield.
What are you talking about? What do you think I am, Theo, who had him 42nd on his quarterback list? I like Baker. I just don't love him like you do.
That was diabolical.
I like him. I just think also it's an amazing situation, and we should be able to acknowledge that.
I feel like I am the eternal Bucs and Baker optimist, so I'm surprised.
That's what I'm saying. I'm more surprised that you don't have them atop this division. But are you riding high with the ATL Falcons, Logan? Are you sipping that ludicrous chicken and beer?
Dude, I am. I'm all about the Falcons this year. I think the Falcons are really, really talented. I think they addressed one of the big needs for them in the offseason at edge rusher, adding a couple of guys through the draft. The biggest difference to me is how much I believe in Michael Penix Jr., though. I thought Kirk Cousins really fell apart as the season went along, threw some games away for them. And they do have a pretty light schedule. And so I think all those things are in the Falcons' favor. And when I look at this offense, I think they could be top 10 or flirting with top 10. I mean, Bijan Robinson was awesome last year. I think they have one hell of a 1-2 punch with him and Algier, and they are running behind one of the best run-blocking units in football. Out wide, I love the receiving core that they have with Drake London, with Darnell Mooney, with Kyle Pitts, where I think Kirk Cousins was a major, major hindrance of this team reaching and doing what they could do. And I do believe in Michael Penix. I think he's really, really accurate. I think he's I think he's very much more mobile than Kirk Cousins and is going to be able to do things.
So am I. Actually, might not be true. We got to get Kirk to run the 40 right now. See if he can contend with my 5.2 time.
I think you're beating him. I don't know if Kirk's got that kind of juice, man.
So.
But I think he's going to be able to do more things with play action, and I think they're going to be able to do more things with RPOs, and I think he's going to protect the ball much better than Kirk Cousins was last year. And I'm pretty high on the defense, too. I think the secondary is the strength of this team, and I really believe in them. And I think they improved a lot in terms of pass rush. I am nervous about the linebackers. I think that is the variable and question mark about this defense. I'm not very high on that group, but I think the offense is going to be really, really good this year. The schedule's light, and I'm a big-time Michael Penix guy, so I think Penix is going to lead this team to where they need to get. Is he going to light the league on fire? No, but I don't think he's going to be as colossal of a disaster as Kirk Cousins was last season, and I think he was a big part of holding this team back last year. So I said it last year. I did buy into Kirk. I thought the Bucs were going to have a bit of a down year. And to be fair, I think this is a toss-up. I think this is the Bucs or Falcons division to win. I'm not very high on the Panthers or Saints. But, yeah, I'm riding with ATL, man. I think the Falcons win the NFC South.
Don't know why you're disrespecting the Saints. Don't know why.
Just wait till you hear my Saints take, buddy.
Just wait till you hear my Saints take, buddy. You just wait. And don't you buddy me. I don't know who you think you are buddying me.
Hey, look here, pal.
There's a clear path to the Falcons being really good. And it's basically Penix is pretty good. And the Kyle Pitts breakout happens that all of America has been waiting for several years.
Take him. You want to take him number 1 in your fantasy draft. He cannot slip any further. He's going to be gone by pick 2. You got to take him.
I've taken him first overall in every league. And not just that, I've traded up every subsequent pick just to get to number 1.
Smart,
so
dude. I traded
Kyle Pitts against the world.
I traded my whole draft for Kyle Pitts.
Yeah, I traded my firstborn son down the line. He's not going to be as good as Kyle Pitts, I'll tell you that right now. So, Penix, good. That would be great. Kyle Pitts, really good season. Like, obviously, there's talent. They've had a number of high draft picks. And then defensively, the thing that we've all been looking at with the Falcons for a while is, okay, can you get pressure? Who's your edge? Who's going to make any difference? And it's like, okay, well, Judon was going to be that guy for them. Hopefully that didn't work out. Now they bring in Leonard Floyd and they draft 2 different edges in the first round. I guess I'm just not super confident in some of those swing factors. I'm just uncertain enough to kind of want to stay away from any big picture proclamations of, oh, the Falcons are going to take the next step, because I think Penix is solid. I think he showed some pretty solid poise this past year. I also think he wasn't quite as accurate as he was as a prospect in college. So I don't know. There's just a small sample size there with him now. Like, do I think he'll be the 20th best quarterback in football this year? I think that would be a success. I think he'll probably be a little bit below that. And so you're still talking about a below average starter at this point. The line is good. I think the run game is going to be awesome. And that's actually where I'm going with my take. I just think Bijan is in for a monster season. 2K total yards, 20 total touchdowns, offensive player of the year. I think Bijan is one of those dudes. And we know Atlanta loves running the football. They will spam outside zone over and over again until you show that you can slow it down. And it's not easy to slow down Bijan. I mean, he's a special all-around running back talent. The volume should be there. Last year, he was second in touches. He was fourth in yards from scrimmage. He was seventh in touchdowns. So I see a guy who's top 3 at the position. I think he's going to have tons of opportunity here, and I think he's going to make the most of it. So the aspect that I am most confident of the Atlanta Falcons with is Bijan. You couldn't even call it a breakout season because he was already amazing last year, but I think this could be the season where we all start talking about Bijan as the best running back in football.
I love it. This is a fire take. I think it's very possible. I love you too, man. I also think if that does happen, I think that takes a lot of the weight of the offense off of Penix's shoulders, and which could lead to this being one of the best offenses in the league and potentially them winning the division. I like it, man. And if you're going to buy it, I think this would be the year to do it, man. Like right before he, fully ascends and takes that throne, which he is very possible of.
Yeah, he's got that kind of talent. We'll see. I'm not as confident, again, in some of the swing factors for this team as you are, but I think that they are clearly second in the division. How about the Panthers, Logan? What's your take for that?
This is a lukewarm take, but it's something of an optimistic one. I think Bryce Young throws for 4,000 yards. I couldn't go for anything higher than that because I don't know, man. This is the make or break year for Bryce. I figure my take had to be about him. I really like what they did for him in this offseason in terms of adding talent. I really like the addition of Teteroya McMillan. I think he's going to be a number 1 in this league. I think he's a stud, and Bryce needs that guy. I think Leggett is due to get better this season. I really like the addition of Hunter Renfrow, though, man. Like, I couldn't believe Hunter Renfrow was out of the league. The guy is a great route runner. I think he's not a number 1, but he is a great number 2 or number 3 and a slot guy. So I'm really glad that they added him in here. And I just think it's the best infrastructure that he's had. He looked way more comfortable when he got put back in the starting spot after getting benched midseason. It's never great that you're getting benched midseason for ancient Andy Dalton, but he course-corrected. He got back on track. He looked much better and much more comfortable in the second half of the season. And Dave Canales looks like, he at least trusts Bryce a little bit more. And so it's not the hottest take by any means, admittedly. But to me, Bryce is either going to hit this benchmark or he's going to be benched. So Bryce either throws for 4,000 yards or the alternative is the Panthers are pulling the plug on Bryce. And he's not going to be a starter beyond this year. So
wow, it's got to be 4K, Logan. He's got to do something no Chicago Bears quarterback has ever done. Or else he dies.
Yeah, I mean,
cold world.
I mean, what do you expect out of? What are you expecting out of Bryce, man?
Oh, my hot take is Bryce Young totals 4,000 yards from scrimmage this season, or not 4,000 yards from scrimmage, 4,000 total yards between passing and rushing. We have the same take, basically.
Nice, man.
I almost had 4,000 passing yards, and then I thought, I don't know. It's not easy to get 4,000 passing yards in 2025 in the NFL.
Especially when you're
with these radical leftist too high shells.
Especially when you're a 5'10" QB, man.
How low are you on Bryce? Because I'm getting some vibes that you think he's a cup of coffee away from being out of the league.
Well, I do have him throwing for 4,000 yards, so I think he's going to stick around. But it's if you asked me Would I rather have him or Penix? I would take Michael Penix. Would I rather have? I'm trying to think of other thought. I'd rather have Bo Nix probably than Bryce Young. That's probably.
Now you've poked the bear.
Maybe that's the line. Maybe that's the Bo Nix line. I'd rather have Bo Nix.
I'd rather have Bryce, which is crazy when you think about where Bryce was week 2 last year and what the discourse was, and basically like all hope had been lost. I think that at that point, he was playing like the worst starting quarterback in football. He wasn't playing like a starting level quarterback. And then he came back and took back the starting job in week 8. And from that point forward, I thought Bryce played pretty well. Like, he went for, over the last 10 weeks, more than 2,300 total yards, 20 total touchdowns, 8 turnovers. And the Panthers were a solid football team. They went 4-6 and they averaged over 23 points per game. So that was convincing to me in the sense that, like, it certainly bought him time. And I think we saw some really good stuff from Bryce. Now, I think some people have taken it too far. Maybe I'm only thinking about the Bryce truthers here, but whenever I see like him and CJ resurface as a conversation, I'm always like, all right, chill. And I do think that fundamentally, just with his physical limitations, Bryce never should have gone number 1 in hindsight, which happens to be 2020. But I do think he made a lot of progress through last season, using his legs more effectively as the year went along. And I think his speed was just kind of underutilized his rookie season and started doing more with his legs. I think overall just his decision-making and composure so dramatically improved. That is probably the biggest difference that we saw, where Bryce, who looked so rattled under those circumstances in the first 2 weeks, ends the year above average in EPA per dropback under pressure, managed those situations pretty well. His accuracy was pretty good. I think his pocket presence improved, hanging in there to make some more big-time throws, while he's also simultaneously creating more outside the pocket. Like, I just thought he was significantly better all around than he was as a rookie, or especially in the first 2 weeks of his sophomore campaign. You give him a weapon like Tet McMillan with a pretty good offensive line, solid weapons overall, right? Thielen can still play decently well. He's got Leggett. Like, I can just see Bryce having a very solid year. And I have not been moved to the point where I think Bryce is going to cement himself as a franchise quarterback, where I think he'll ever be a top 10 quarterback. But I do think he's a starter in this league. I think he's going to have a career in this league. Is that going to manifest itself in the Panthers being 500? No, I think this defense is still going to be horrible. But I also think that defense being horrible means more spots where Bryce is trying to throw you back into games, more yardage for Bryce, agenda achieved, 4K total yards. Put it in the bank. You teased it earlier, Logan, you little tease. Last team in the NFL. What is your hot take about the New Orleans Saints?
Plug your ears, Saints fans. I think the Saints are going to be the worst team in the NFL, man. Like, clearly to me. I know a lot of people think that the Browns are going to be the worst team in the league. When you are in a position to trot out Mr. Tyler Shuck, how the fuck you say his last name, man? Tyler Shuck.
Watch it. Family program.
More like Tyler Sucks, am I right? Dude.
Logan, the cameras are rolling. You can't say that shit.
No hyperbole. And you tell me if you disagree. Okay. This is the worst quarterback room I've ever seen a team trot out. Like, one of. It's Spencer Rattler. I never bought into. I never thought was going to be an NFL quarterback. Is projected to be their starting quarterback. Tyler Sucks is their QB2, who is like 26 or something.
Well, we still don't know, at least as of the time of recording. And they're an official starter.
And their third quarterback is zesty Jake Hayner. So, like,
hating.
I mean, you know, the team around them isn't bad. I don't have a ton of bad things to say. Like, you know, I like Olave. I like Kamara. It'd be better if it was 5 years ago. I'd really love Kamara. You know, he's getting up there in age. This team is old as hell, devoid of stars, and their quarterback room is one of the worst I've ever seen. So I don't know, man. I know a lot of people, again, have said Cleveland. I think Cleveland's defense is head and shoulders better than New Orleans. I can't say much more than that about Cleveland, but I think we're looking at a 2-win season maybe for New Orleans. So I think they're going to end up with the number 1 pick in the NFL draft next season.
I want to ask you, Logan, is
Yes.
this worse than the famous 2008 Chiefs, Tyler Thigpen, Damon Heward, Brody Croyle, Big Three?
It's not. Well, I don't. It's close.
Could it be?
It's pretty close. The other one I thought of. Let me see if I can pull it up real quick. The post Michael Vick prison sentence Falcons in 07 under Bobby Petrino had Joey Harrington, Chris Redman, and Byron Leftwich. They combined for 18 TDs and 15 picks. Actually, my fault. The worst quarterback.
Kim McQuilkin?
Yes, that's the worst QB room. It's a great pull, Carson. It is actually a phenomenal pull on your part. That's the worst quarterback room of all time with Kim McQuilkin because nothing quite. Let me pull that group up real quick for the audience.
I just pulled them up. 74-76 with the Falcons. The man threw 3 touchdowns against 28 interceptions. He completed 40% of his passes, basically.
He's
actually,
the load.
just under. His adjusted yards per attempt were negative.
Yeah.
His passer rating, 16. Unbelievable. What a talent.
So I think the Saints have the worst quarterback room potentially in the modern NFL, like since 2000 maybe. The worst quarterback room ever, the 1976 Falcons. Steve Bartkowski, Scott Hunter, and
watch it. You take it back right fucking now.
Kim McQuilkin.
That's a Cal Bears legend.
These guys combined to complete 44% of their passes. They threw for 1,400 yards. Nobody surpassed 700 yards passing, and they had 10 touchdowns to 24 picks with a combined passer rating of 41.5. Let's see what they did on the ground. Oh, yes, they had 23 fumbles as a team as well. That's a team, not the quarterback room.
Oh, that would be amazing.
The quarterback room alone combined for, oh, wow.
Yeah. They
9 fumbles. But still, what a group, man. What a group. When you're in Kim McQuilkin conversations, you're going to be shit.
That'd be crazy to be in Kim McQuilkin. Is he still alive? I don't know.
Wow.
But I'll tell you, Steve Bartkowski, 1980, 31 touchdowns, third in MVP voting. Respect him.
That's what the conservative media is hiding from you.
That's exactly right. I mean, I have basically the same take. I think the Saints go 2-15. I might have even gotten cheekier and said 1-16 if they didn't have the easiest schedule in the NFL. So you got to think at some point you get 2 Panthers games on your schedule. Can you steal one of them? You go against the Jets. You go against the Titans. You go against the Giants, the Bears. Those are decent teams. I mean, I'd be surprised if the Saints beat them. But crazy shit happens. You know, it's hard to only win one game in a football season. You're going to want to cover your ears for this, Logan, because Derek Carr is the only thing holding this football team together. Last year, they were 5-5 when he played. They were 0-7 without him. In the games that he did not play, they averaged 13 points per game and allowed 31 points per game. They're getting beaten by 2 touchdowns and a field goal on average when you take Derek Carr off the field. When he's on the field, people are saying, ooh, sneaky dark horse playoff contender, the New Orleans Saints, 500 football team. That being said, Derek Carr wasn't good. It's just the alternative quarterback play is absolutely horrific. And
the Saints
that's where the Saints really set themselves apart, man.
They're tanking, right?
Oh, absolutely they're tanking. Nobody would ever walk into a season with this as their quarterback room if they were not fully tanking.
They've got to be tanking for Arch Manning or Garrett Nussmeier or something, man.
Yeah, maybe they do want Arch. Arch and Archie. That'd be fun to have that in the same lineage. But Arch isn't coming out this year, so you got to wait another year for the whole Arch Manning experience, or at least they say he's not coming out this year. That's really what it comes down to. Like, I truly do think this could be the worst quarterback play we've seen in a number of years, and the roster is bad too, but, like, the offensive situation around the quarterback isn't that bad. The defense was quite bad last year, but the pass rush could be okay. They've got Cam Jordan, Chase Young, Carl Granderson. They were 24th in passing yards per attempt allowed last year, 31st in rushing yards per attempt allowed. I think the run defense will be pretty awful. They do bring in Justin Reed at safety, who's good, but they lost Paulson Adebo. The corners are really bad. again, though, if you look top to bottom, it's not like, oh, this is far and away the worst roster in football at all. It's a bad roster with a quarterback room that is like a tier below everybody else. Maybe I get surprised by Spencer Rattler or Tyler Shuck, but it would be that. It would be a big surprise. The expectation is they're going to be the worst in football. Yeah. So there you have it. More like the New Orleans ain't slogan, as they used to say back in the day. More like the ain'ts.
Yeah, like the ain'ts. I recommend fans get their paper bags ready, man.
Yeah, to throw up in, because the football is going to be that disgusting to watch. On that note, we hope that this podcast wasn't that disgusting to watch, although it probably was. 2+ hours of us just laying it all out there, Logan. Hot takes, baby. Now we've given one about every team in the NFL. We hope you enjoyed. And if you want more of our content, as always, you know where to find us. All of our NFL season preview content, which we have more coming of, is on our YouTube channel, along with all of our NBA stuff. We're ranking so much shit, along with all of our trivia stuff. And you can also listen to all these full episodes across all audio platforms. If you want, you can also follow us across social, TikTok, Instagram, @NerdSesh, Twitter, @Nerd_Sesh, to see graphics from the show, clips from the show sometimes, and our daily trivia content. And if you want, you can join our Discord. That is at the link that is in the link tree across our social media bios. So with that, as always, I've been Carson Brabber.
I have been Logan Camden.
And this was Nerd Sesh.